Welcome in. It is Big Ten today on a Tuesday. We are presented by CDW. Great to have you with us. Dave Revson, Rafael Davis. Man, a couple big games tonight. I mean, Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, Wisconsin. Fired up for both of them.
Yeah, these are the games that early on in the season, no matter what is going on in February, you circle them. The Purdue at Michigan State game going to be big time. Wisconsin on a roll right now. Feels like Illinois needs a win. But don't look past that Minnesota-UCLA game. Minnesota right now playing good basketball. Got a big-time win without Dawson Garcia having a big one at USC. I think big fella's going to have a big game tonight against the Bruins.
Yeah, interesting. I'm not sure I would have circled Illinois, Wisconsin at the beginning of the year, and that's just part of the great story of Wisconsin, right? They have so exceeded expectations this year, turned into one of the hottest teams, and they are rising up in the bracketology world, which ties us into the other guy who's joining us now, Mike DeCourcy. Hello, Mike, and let's focus in. You're just emerging from your Tuesday morning brackets. I always envision you with paper everywhere, right? And you got net rankings and quad one wins and trying to piece it all together. But give us a sense of what happened and how that Purdue loss to Wisconsin over the weekend impacted your seedings.
Yeah, it changed everything, really, for those two teams. Because Wisconsin, even though they didn't move in terms of their line, they certainly moved in terms of their prominence. They put themselves into the conversation for a 2 seed over the next several weeks. And Purdue, of course, was a solid 2 with an opportunity to play toward the 1. That fourth number 1, although Florida put a pretty nice claim on it with that victory at Auburn, I still think it's available to a lot of teams, and I thought Purdue was one of the teams that could have, because one, they have a terrific team, and two, they have all these great opportunities down the stretch. It's going to be a lot harder to get there from here, but they still have so many challenging games, and if they were able to somehow dominate those games, then they would have a chance to maybe even steal that last 1 seed.
All right, well, let's put some numbers on what Mike's talking about. His bracket today is our big story, and the Big Ten with 3 of the 4 3 seeds as of this morning. Wisconsin, Michigan, Purdue, all on that 3 line. Michigan State just behind them as a 4. Obviously, since the last time the bracket came out, they had their come-from-behind win at Illinois. Maryland is a 5, UCLA a 6. The Illini and Oregon are both on the 7 line. Then Nebraska is a 9, and Ohio State rounding out the group as a 10 seed. You see Indiana listed among the next 4 out. So now not the first 4 out, but the next group there. And Mike, let's dive into this and start with Purdue. They were a 2 seed when the bracket came out on Saturday, so down a spot. And you were talking about, hey, maybe they were still in play for a 1 seed before that loss. Do you still see them potentially, like, is it a bridge too far at this point, or if they went on a hot streak here, could they still eke into that final 1 spot?
Yeah, when I said dominate the games, I'm not saying go out and beat Michigan State by 20. I'm talking about they have a significant series of games remaining, and how do you perform in those games? And if you were able to win 4 out of 5 or all 5, that's the dominance that they would need in order to get themselves up into the conversation with Florida. We're talking about 3 road games at Michigan State, at Indiana, and at Illinois, plus UCLA at home. That's 4 quad 1 games. And then they have Rutgers mixed in there as well, which obviously is a challenge. Even though they are not in that quad 1 category, they have 2 elite talents. So a really difficult stretch for the Boilermakers. But if they were able to excel in that stretch, then yeah, I think if you're winning on the road against this level of teams, they have to consider you for that line, or maybe even to climb just to the 2. Still a great advantage for them, because if they can get to the 2, they can put themselves into the conversation for better geography, going to Cleveland to open the tournament perhaps, as opposed to maybe having to get shipped to Wichita or wherever. That's an important element for them as well. And then, of course, the opportunity to play in Indianapolis in the regional round would be a more available to them likely as a 2 seed than as a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, and if Purdue wants to excel, they want to win 4 of these next 5 games, they've got to be much, much better on the defensive end because Wisconsin comes into Mackey Arena and they just take advantage of the Boilers on the offensive end. John Tonje was outstanding in that game at Mackey Arena. So I look at Braden Smith in the Player of the Year conversation for the country. Fletcher Lawyer, one of the best shooters we have in this league, and the freshman C.J. Cox, they've got to guard their yard. It was Ohio State's guards with them at home. Wisconsin guards got them. You look at Michigan State, a guard-driven team. Jay Nakins, Trey Holloman getting in the lane and making plays. UCLA, their guards have been playing much better basketball. And we all know how good Kasparis Jakashonis is or Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey at Rutgers. So Purdue, they want to get into that contention for that 2 seed, maybe even the 1 seed. You've got to guard your yard. You've got to rebound at a high level. But I'm expecting for those guys to bounce back in East Lansing tonight.
We talked about it yesterday. It probably bears repeating. 317th in the nation in 2-point field goal percentage defense. So speaks to what you're talking about, not just for the guards, but on the interior, although those could be tied into one another, obviously. What about Wisconsin, Mike? A team that was picked 12th in the Big Ten in the preseason. As of this morning, they are 12th in the net in the nation. So, I mean, it really speaks to the job that Greg Gard has done. No losses outside of quad 1. You mentioned you still have them as a 3, but that you view them differently than you did before that game against Purdue. So how high can they go? Like, what's the ceiling for Wisconsin based on what's left on this schedule and how they're playing?
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to get to a 1 based on what they've done to this point and what they have remaining. Because the way Wisconsin built this season was kind of like, let's not do anything wrong. I mean, I don't know that that was the plan, but that's how it played out. Don't do anything wrong. And they haven't done anything wrong all year. They have no losses to any teams that they shouldn't lose to or that shouldn't even be in a consideration. But what they started on Saturday is what they need to do down the stretch to change their fortunes if they want to climb higher. And that was the Purdue win on the road. And you're looking now at Illinois and teams like that that would change their perception in the committee room if they continue to win high-level games, the kind of thing that they didn't do as much early on while they were beating everybody they were supposed to. I think that's the key for Wisconsin is to start winning those, or not start, continue now that they beat Purdue, continue winning those high-level games, and they can put themselves in a solid 3 and maybe even get to a 2.
And now I say it's a little easier to win those big games when you have a guy like John Tonje. John Tonje is playing at an all Big Ten first-team caliber level, should be in the Player of the Year conversation. Last 7 games, John Tonje is averaging near 25 points a contest. So at this point in the season, you need your best players to be playing their best ball. John Tonje is giving them that. And then I loved what Max Klesman was able to do in Mackey Arena. He got back to himself. He got back to that confident Max Klesman. If they can get Max Klesman giving them production on the wing to go along what he does defensively, you know Nolan Winter's going to be there. John Blackwell's an all Big Ten caliber player. Stephen Krause starts getting a little bit aggressive. I like Wisconsin in the tournament because you need a guy when things get stagnant, you can get a basketball to, get out the way, and go make me a play. And that just happens to be John Tonje. He has been sensational. I love what Wisconsin is doing. This has to be the most athletic backcourt that they've had in a long, long time.
I think it's their best team since Frank Kaminsky left campus.
I agree with you.
I would not have thought that coming into this year. It's really been a great story, and we've been talking about Big Ten Coach of the Year. I think a lot of people feeling like, wow, it's Dusty Mays. Yep. I don't know, man.
That's tough,
Greg Gard's done an awfully good job. But let's talk about Michigan. And what they continue to do that's remarkable is win these close games. I mean, 6 straight wins by 4 points or fewer. It's tied for the longest streak in college basketball since 1950. They just keep getting it done down the stretch in games, Mike. I mean, it's crazy. It's really ridiculous what they've done. You have them as a 3 seed as well. Help people understand, like, what kind of impact, if any, does the way that you won games, how does that impact you? I know the net kind of factors that in a little bit. To what extent is that something that gets calculated in, that gets baked into those numbers?
I think it's important for people to understand there are 2 brands of metrics that are included on the NCAA tournament resume, or what they call in the committee room the team sheet. There are the predictive metrics, which include margin of victory and efficiency and those elements. And then there are the results metrics, which are strictly just based on how many games you win and how good are the teams that you play and where did you win those games, whether neutral, home, or away. And if you look at Michigan's resume, they do extraordinarily well in those resume metrics. They are averaging ninth in the country in the resume metrics, which is the highest 3 seed. But then where they fall down a little bit is in the predictors, where they're closer to 20, which is a borderline 4 or 5. And so that's where they have struggled a bit. They lost 3 quad 2 games. They kind of have to make up for that, but they have 5 quad 1 games remaining. People wonder, does it matter to win the Big Ten? Does that factor? It does to an extent. They do respect that league champion. It's not going to be factored into metrics now because you don't know that you're going to do it. But here's the thing. In order to win the Big Ten title, Michigan has to win a vast number of those 5 quad 1 games. So that will vastly improve their resume if they're able to complete their march on the Big Ten title.
See, I'm one of those guys where I strongly believe that margin of victory is kind of bogus sometimes, because you get in a non-conference, you can play the scheduling game, and you can blow teams out by 30. You can get off to a great start in the net.
Yep.
But I think it's tougher to go in conference play and win games by 4 or 5 points. I think that is much harder to do. You should not be hit for winning close games. And you look at Michigan right now, good teams, close teams, connected teams, they win the close games. Guys that know how to win ball games, they're playing their best basketball as of late. Danny Wolf has gotten back to the Danny Wolf that we know him to be. The game against Ohio State, he was sensational. 17 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, only 1 turnover. If Michigan finds a way to keep taking care of the basketball, 3 seed, 2 seed, 1 seed, I can see Michigan making a deep run to that Final Four and getting all the way there.
Last 4 games, no more than 12 turnovers in a game. So to your point, it's something Dusty May has harped on quite a bit. Taking care of the ball, they have done a lot better with that. 12 is a number you can live with. Absolutely a number that you can live with. It's a remarkable story. I mean, from worst to first in the Big Ten in 1 year. So much more to come on the show. We're going to continue to take a look at the Big Ten's tourney hopefuls. Tom Izzo's team fresh off a historic win, and Maryland continuing to roll. Stick around. Back on Big Ten today, Michigan State fresh off Saturday's come-from-behind win over Illinois. Mentioned earlier, they host Purdue tonight. It is the beginning of a serious gauntlet down the stretch for Tom Izzo's team. 6 games left. Every single one of them is a quad 1 opportunity. Bart Torvik, his great analytics site, rates this the toughest remaining schedule in the Big Ten. It is tough to argue with that. Mike, obviously these games are a double-edged sword, right? I mean, if you win a bunch of these games, you start accumulating quad 1 victories. It would help if they play like they did in that second half against Illinois, because they were unbelievable on Saturday night in Champaign. How do you view Tom Izzo's team as we head into the home stretch?
Well, I think in a lot of ways that level of challenge is good at this point. It could wear you out a little bit. That's a problem. But in terms of how they fit into the tournament picture, it's hard to go wrong. I mean, if you go 500 in that stretch, you're accumulating more quad 1 wins than some teams will in the entire year. And so I don't think that this is a problem for the Spartans as long as they perform to the standards that they have to this point in the season. I think they're right there in the 4 or 5 picture. I don't see them falling below a 5 unless they were to really struggle down the stretch. And then because you have such great opportunity, you really have the opportunity to affect your seed positively.
Talk about wear you out, Mike. These are kids, 18 to 23-year-olds. They better not get tired. This is what you signed up for when you come to Michigan State. When you come play Big Ten basketball, you want these big games at the end of the season. You want to go. You want Purdue. You want to play in a rivalry game at Michigan. You want to beat Wisconsin. You want to go run the doors off of Iowa out in Carver City. You want these games. So I look at this Michigan State squad. I talked to Coach Izzo. He's just happy they're back to their toughness. That mentality where we're going to guard you, we're going to fight you for 40 minutes long. Talked to Trey Holloman the other day. These guys feel like they are really in contention, not just to get a 4 seed, but to win the Big Ten, win the Big Ten tournament, and make one of those deep runs. This reminds me of that 2015 Michigan State team where you didn't have a bona fide star. Brandon Dawson maybe had been the only all-Big Ten caliber player, but you had games where Travis Trice one-on-one. Denzel Valentine, before he got going his senior year, he would win them games. You look at this Michigan State squad, as long as they get production from a Jackson Kohler inside, Xavier Booker, Carson Cooper, that's when we'll see the best of them. But they're going to guard, they're going to push the ball, they're going to rebound at a high level. I'm never counting the Spartans out.
It does feel like kind of a vintage Tom Izzo team. I thought that Illinois game, to win the rebounding battle against one of the best rebounding teams in the country. Now, part of that is Illinois missed 1 million shots. So you've got a lot of defensive rebound opportunities. I understand that can be a little bit of a deceptive stat. But again, they defend, they rebound, they get out and run, they do all the things that Izzo's teams do when they're at their best. And, it's been 4 years, only one time they finished in the top 4 in the Big Ten. So to have them back in the race, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I mentioned this to Raphael yesterday, Mike. I've had a few coaches tell me now, as I'm out doing games, hey, Maryland may be the best team in the Big Ten, which, again, the metrics don't necessarily say that. The resume doesn't necessarily say it's not that far off. But you talk about a team that's playing well and peaking at the right time. Man, Maryland's got a bullet, as they used to say in the record charts, a bullet next to their name here in I've got to believe, in your seedings.
Yeah, it's exactly the way I was thinking of it, that they are one of the fast risers. They were on the 7 line a few weeks ago, and they are climbing rapidly. And I think it comes down to them finally playing to what all the metrics said they are, which is one of the top 15 or so teams in the country. That's what the predictive metrics have been saying all along, and now they're starting to win those games. They're up to 6-5 against Quad 1, 9-6 against 1 and 2 combined, and they've got 3 Quad 1 games remaining. They have USC first, which is not a Quad 1 game, but then 3 in a row, and that, I think, will decide whether or not they can solidify where they are in the bracket now or perhaps rise a smidge. They don't have the toughest remaining schedule. You saw that on the board a few minutes ago. It's certainly Michigan State. So they have to continue to perform as they have, and I think that would put them in a great position going into Indianapolis.
Yeah, we've been talking all season. Who's the most talented team in the Big Ten? It started out as Indiana. Maybe it was Illinois, but it's Maryland. Maryland is the best team in this conference, talent-wise and on the floor. You put 5 guys on the floor, and what can you get? You get with Maryland, you get the best backcourt in the conference. You look Jacoby Rice, Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel. 61 points combined against Iowa, and they made 12 threes and had 16 assists. The backcourt is there. You need guards to win big in March. And then their front court, Julian Reese, Derek Queen, may be the best front court in the country. Both of them go for double-doubles against Iowa. They can score different ways on the block, in the mid-range, get to the free throw line, and then they guard you. They guard their yard. All 3 guards can guard every possession on the perimeter. Derek Queen could be a freshman that could rise to the All-Big Ten defensive team. Julian Reese as well. They rebound, they push it. This Maryland squad, I don't care what seed they get. They can beat anyone in the country. This is a team that can 100% reach the Final Four and do some damage, in my opinion.
The overhaul is so amazing, right? They're averaging about 80 points per game in conference play. It was 67 last year. It's just night and day. They really are. They're a fun team. That starting 5 is great. Mike, Raphael and I were talking yesterday about Illinois, and he just said it, right? The talent is great. Now you've got Merez Johnson, though, out indefinitely with a broken wrist, so that is damaging news, no doubt, for the Fighting Illini. And you look at that performance and how they played in the second half against Michigan State. It's just a team that I'm starting to fear that they're going to fall so far in the seedings here that they're just not going to have a chance to accomplish what the ceiling seems to suggest they could accomplish in the tournament. Give us a sense of where Illinois is and how they moved around in your bracketing.
You think about those movies where somebody's being pushed up against a cliff or a ledge of a building, and that's kind of Illinois looking at that, and the ledge is that 8-9 game. That's where they've been pushed to the brink of, and they have to fight back against that. And how they fight back, Dave and Raphael, is they've got to play better down the stretch. They struggled at the end of that Tennessee game. We all remember the mistakes they made there. The end of the Rutgers game, they took difficult shots, and then, of course, it sort of culminated in those 19 consecutive missed shots against Michigan State. They've got a very difficult next stretch. They've got the at Wisconsin game tonight, and then they play Duke at Madison Square Garden. Duke is either the best or second best team in the country. Illinois' talent is there. The execution late has to be there. And I'm not saying if they lose these next 2 games, look, most teams would. If you look at it, most teams in the country would lose these 2 games. So it's not going to be that punitive for them. But they've got to start to win these close games when they have the opportunities, or they're going to fall in 8-9 range. They won't fall out, of course not. but they will fall in an 8-9 game, and then you have to deal with the number 1 seed, and who knows, it could be Auburn. Why do you want to put yourself in that situation before you have to?
Yeah, you never want to put yourself in that situation. But having played in the 8-9 game and knowing how talented we were, knowing we weren't nearly as good as Illinois' team this year, I don't hate it. You know what I mean? If there's a team in the conference,
it's not where you want to be.
But it's not.
With their collection.
If there's one team in the conference that you say 8-9 game, who can be the number 1 seed?
Agreed.
I'm going Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, again,
and then you flip everything. But it's going to come down, like you were saying, the shot selection, being patiently aggressive offensively. Because if you get the Illinois squad that we saw in the second half of the Ohio State game, where they decided to pound the paint, 50 points in the paint, stop shooting ill-advised threes, get to the basket. Not many guards can keep Will Riley away from the cup. Not many big men can keep Tomislav Ivicic out of that paint, away from the basket. And then Kasparis Jack has shown us, he's shown when he's smart playing good high IQ basketball, one of the best point guards in the country. So no, you don't want to be in the 8-9 game, but I'm not worried about Illinois in that aspect because they can beat anybody in the country, but we know they can lose to anybody in the country as well.
And the loss of Johnson hurts because I do think the competitive advantage was inside having 2 bigs that you can dump the ball down to. So we'll see. I mean, if there's anyone who can reinvent his team at midseason and play differently than they have been, it is Brad Underwood. I mean, he's done, we've seen him do it through the years. So we shall see with the Fighting Illini. We still have 4 more tourney hopefuls to sort through. UCLA has been hot down the stretch. We'll check in on them, as well as an Ohio State team. It's been a bit up and down lately. Mike will give us the tourney read on those 2 and a couple more as well. It was about a month ago. We were looking at UCLA and thinking this thing is headed in the wrong direction. They have righted the ship in a huge way. 8 wins in 9 games. Mentioned Mike has them as a 6 seed this morning. The resume, as you can see, includes 7 quad 1 wins. They're 10-7 against the top 2 quads. Wins over Arizona, Gonzaga, Wisconsin, Michigan State for Mick Cronin's team. Mike, this is a team that has showcased its depth. They are surely trending in the right direction here. They defend the heck out of you. This does not feel to me like a team that anyone wants to play. Give us a sense of what you've seen here from Cronin's team in terms of where they fit in this bracket.
Yeah, I think the elevation of Adai Mara into a significant factor in every game he plays at both ends of the floor has really changed UCLA's prognosis for March. They are not that far from a 5 seed. The metrics all say 6, which is a nice place to be in. There's no disparity basically between their predictive metrics and their resume metrics. They are who they say they are, so to speak. And I think now getting the chance to go back home for 3 of their final games, all at Pauley. So protect Pauley is big for them. If they can do that and they can split their trip back to the Midwest, they've got at Purdue and at Northwestern. If they can split that trip and protect Pauley, they sit right firmly into a 5 or a 6 seed, a great position to be in. Of course, they'll have to play the Big Ten tournament as well. But if they can get those home wins, I think that will be huge for Mick Cronin and the Bruins.
Yeah, and I think the way they go about getting those home wins is Adai Mara. Like you said, Mike, Adai Mara has been big time for them on both ends. He's blocking shots. He's discouraging guys from driving to the basketball just with his sheer size and presence. Offensively, he's a guy you can throw the ball down to him, and he can score that thing. He scored on the block with the left hand, with the right hand. Really got extremely good footwork down there on the block. And what it does is it frees up the outside because now you're going to have to send a double team, a little bit more help, and now Kobe Johnson is playing much better. Sky Clark is knocking down shots as best as he's been all season. So you get a real post presence, and then what it also does, now Eric Daly has to play against a 4-man on the offensive end. And Eric Daly, as big and strong he is, not many 4-men can keep him in front and keep him out of the lane. So it gives him great positional size, great floor balance. But at this time of the year, we talk all season, guards are making you go. And Kobe Johnson has been phenomenal on both ends of the floor. Sky Clark playing his best ball. Sebastian Mack is giving him something off the bench.
You mentioned they got Minnesota. We were talking about this off the top. Minnesota coming in tonight. Mick Cronin looking for win number 500. He would be the youngest active coach to hit 500 career wins. So big milestone coming up. And then they've got Ohio State coming in after that over the weekend. Let's focus in on the Buckeyes here, Mike. They are a team that is under 500 against the top 2 quads. You still have them fairly solidly in here? I mean, help us understand just how solid Ohio State is right now.
Yeah, I think there are two things working for the Buckeyes. One is the number of really high-quality wins they have. Games like Purdue and Kentucky, that's very important for them. And then the other thing that really helps them is how difficult it is for the teams behind them. They're just not very impressive on a resume standpoint. And Ohio State, like I said, Purdue, Maryland, Kentucky, Texas, those are all high-quality wins that some teams that are flirting with 3 and 4 seeds can't match. So they are well under 500 against the top 2 quadrants, and it would be good for them if they're able to get the next bunch of games to do a decent job. They do have to go to California, which is obviously a challenge because the teams out there are terrific and the environments are terrific. But if the Buckeyes finish the season 500-ish in what remains for them, they'll be firmly in the field.
Yeah.
No, and the way they finish the season strong is having an interior presence. I mean, we know Devin Roy. I mean, we know Bruce Thornton, you look at Bruce Thornton, you look at John Mobley Jr., you look at a guy on the wing and Micah Parrish. Those 3 guys can put the ball in the basket. But you look at that Michigan game where Michigan won that game, it was on the glass. Devin Royal goes for 26 points, but Michigan out-rebounds Ohio State by 15, 19 offensive rebounds. In order to win at the highest level in this league, confirm your spot in the big dance, you need presence from a Sean Stewart, from an Aaron Bradshaw. They've got to give you more on the glass. Ohio State, their guards can compete with anyone in the country. But when it comes to inside interior play, those big fellas, they got to give them something. Their ceiling is rising as long as their bigs are getting better throughout this season. But if you can't rebound at a high level, you can't win at a high level. So I'm looking forward to this game this weekend to see how Ohio State acts on that glass.
Got to defend better, too. They really haven't defended all that well here in the last 5 games or so. Let's focus in on Oregon. They had 2 home games they had to win.
Yep.
Right, and they won them, Northwestern and Rutgers. Now you head on the road, Iowa and Wisconsin. Mike, you've got them as a 7 seed. I mean, it feels to me like that's about as solid as it gets. It is interesting to note that their number of quad 1 wins has steadily declined here. There were some games that counted as quad 1s that no longer do, but give us some insight into the Ducks.
Yeah, I think that they are pretty solid at 7, but the schedule does challenge them down the stretch. I think that Iowa game on Wednesday night is enormous for the Ducks because of what follows. You go to Wisconsin. Certainly, you can win there, but it's not one that you would look at on paper and say, okay, you're going to do that. So that Iowa game, it's a quad 1 opportunity. It's one of only 2 quad 1s they have remaining. And then down the stretch, they have USC, Indiana at home, and at Washington. So they certainly are in position to firm up the fact that they are at least a 7 seed. But they could fall easily. I mean, New Mexico is an example of a team that is just pounding on the door, waiting for someone on the 7 line to open the door for them. New Mexico, I've had as a consistent 8 seed, and I think that that's a team that probably deserves to be a 7. I just haven't been able to find room for them there. Oregon can't create that room, or they fall into that 8-9 game we talked about before.
Yeah, and Oregon's a team where I don't want them to fall in that 8-9 game. I don't trust them like I trust the Illinois squad offensively. And in order for those guys to finish strong, Jackson Shellstad has to be constant. He has to be a contributor every single night. In their Big Ten wins this season, Jackson Shellstad is averaging nearly 20 points a game. In their losses, he has just simply struggled. Had 19 points in the game against Rutgers. They won that game. He's got to continue this on. Nate Biddle has got to show up every night. He's got to be a 15-10 guy every time they step on the floor. But when I look at Oregon, I want them to develop a little bit more mental toughness. When they go wrong offensively, they start missing some shots, they start turning the ball over, it's almost as if they get weaker and weaker. But you have to fight through that adversity. You had to have some mental fortitude to fight through those times and still defend on the other end. Your offense cannot affect your defense, and sometimes that's the problem with Oregon. When they're making shots like they were against Rutgers, they are really good, feel like they can beat anybody, but they miss a few, things start going bad, Dana Altman gets into them on the sidelines, sometimes they quit. But I would expect them to finish this season out strong because you get a good Jackson Shellstad, you get a tough Nate Biddle, you get TJ Bamba going, you get Brandon Angel get going. Their bench is very deep. Oregon can make some noise, but to me, it's going to be with their defense and their mental toughness, which hasn't been there all season long.
There is a ton of talent there, but to your point, this 7-game stretch they've been on where they lost to 5 in a row and then they've won these last 2, 14th in the Big Ten in defensive efficiency in that stretch. So it's really the defensive end that has suffered for them for the reasons you talked about. Okay, finally, let's focus in on Nebraska coming off the narrow win over Northwestern. Really an amazing comeback for the Huskers to get what was a quad one victory. You have them as a 9 seed right now, Mike. Is it, again, just as simple as nothing catastrophic here down the stretch and they get in for the second straight year?
Yeah, I think much like Ohio State, 500-ish, and of course that's hard to say because you don't know how many games they'll play in the Big Ten tournament, but that neighborhood will get them in. But what's interesting, coming off of 5 wins in 6 games, maybe they're better than all this. They've got 6 quad one wins now. What if down the stretch they go ahead and they take care of business at home against Michigan? They go on the road, Ohio State, a team that would be in their weight class right now, and then they have 3 non-tournament, non-field opponents, I should say, right now. So if they went down the stretch with the same gusto that they did over the course of the last half dozen games, they might be able to redefine their seeding as well as their entire season. I certainly wouldn't put that past Nebraska based on what they've shown us in the last several weeks.
Yeah, and if they want to finish this season strong, it's got to be from the players. It can't be Coach Hoiberg breaking a dry erase board to get these guys going, because at the start of that Northwestern game, it felt like Nebraska, they didn't understand what they were playing for. They were just going through the motions, expecting to just get there, not realizing that you could play yourself out of the tournament just as well as you could play yourself into it. And in that second half, that's got to be the emotion and the energy that they take to every game throughout this rest of the season. Whatever Coach Hoiberg said at halftime, someone should have been recording it, and someone should have sent it to everybody on the team and made that their new alarm clock in the morning so they understand how big each and every game is the rest of this season. Because I look at Bryce Williams, a star, all Big Ten first team, could be in the Player of the Year conversation, averaging 25 points the last 6 games. Juwan Gary, he's answered the charge, averaging close to 20 points the last 5 games. They need a third scorer to be consistent, rather it's Riley Rooster, Burke Buchengel, maybe Sam Hoiberg can step up and make some shots, but it's going to be with their toughness, it's going to be with their defense, it's going to be with their mindset. A bunch of junkyard dogs cannot go out there and act like puppies and expect to win basketball games. Nebraska has the dogs. They just got to keep that dog mentality.
I thought Braxton Mia brought that mentality
yes,
in the
did.
second half at Evanston on Sunday. He was really good. Maybe argue he was part of the difference there for Nebraska. And again, everyone knows the storyline with the Huskers. They're the only power conference team that has never won an NCAA tournament game, so seeding matters, right? Can you get yourself into a position with a favorable matchup and maybe end that drought? Lots more coming up from these guys in just a bit, but we're going to turn our attention to the women next. Autumn Johnson set to drop by. College hoops world still buzzing about Juju Watkins' amazing showing against UCLA. We will take the pulse of those 2 programs and the rest of the conference straight ahead. In an announcement that should surprise absolutely no one, Juju Watkins named the Big Ten Player of the Week yesterday on the women's side. 38 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, and 8 blocks in the Trojans' huge win over then undefeated and number 1 UCLA. The first player this century to put together those numbers at any level, D1 men or women, WNBA or NBA. It really was an amazing performance. And Autumn Johnson joining us now. Autumn, I know we're a little bit removed from it. I mean, each of those teams has played a game since then, but it was such an amazing performance. I'm just curious. It's the first time I've had a chance to talk to you since that game. Your biggest takeaways on each team coming out of it?
Yeah, far removed, but we're still talking about it because that game absolutely lived up to the hype, and Juju Watkins had a generational game. For USC, my biggest takeaway, yes, it was fun to watch the offensive clinic that Juju put on, but for me, it truly was USC's defensive intensity. I mean, they held UCLA to a season low of 60 points, just 35% from the floor, forced 20 UCLA turnovers, which is very uncharacteristic for this team. And I loved how USC just made in-game adjustments, neutralizing Lauren Betts inside, flying around, using their length to be disruptive. And Juju Watkins nearly had 8 blocks, like you mentioned. It was a masterclass. And as far as UCLA, they only let Juju beat them. It took 38 points, and everyone else outside of that was at bay. So you have to be kind of proud with that. If you look at the silver lining, Kiki Area-Finn had some key moments and key buckets in the fourth. 9 of her 13 points came in that final frame. But outside of that, there weren't any crazy contributions consistently on the offensive end. Offense wasn't the norm for the Bruins, I would say. Like, they would have to clean up the turnovers moving forward. They get this game once again March 1st. Lauren Betts going 5 for 13 from the floor. That needs to change. This has been their special sauce as the number one team, going to Lauren Betts, and I thought credit to USC for disrupting that.
It's pretty amazing to hold any team to 8 points in the fourth quarter, but to hold UCLA, I mean, the number one team in the country, as you were talking about, that USC defense was really something. What about Watkins? Look, she's been amazing now her entire career, and there was a lot of talk that she was kind of the heir apparent heading into this season, with Caitlin Clark obviously moving on to the WNBA, Angel Reese as well. Where does she fall right now? Is she the front runner for National Player of the Year? Who else would be in that conversation?
Yeah, I think despite that game, Lauren Betts is still in that conversation. Hannah Hidalgo over at Notre Dame as well. But Juju Watkins, you cannot deny a 38-point, 11 rebound, and 8 block performance. Like, that's nearly a triple-double against the number one team in the country, almost scoring 40 points. And on top of that, already, like, what she's been doing this season has been incredible. She has been going through some up and down efficiency issues, but 6 for 9 from deep. I think that was just a clear reminder that she's one of the most dominant players in the country. She was in the zone. I love the feel of her game that she plays with. Like, it's on another level. Her ability to just take over big time games and pack both ends, elevate her teammates. But for me, it was the defense. Like, that really helps her stand out, just like a Hannah Hidalgo, like a Lauren Betts, a complete player. When you look at those 8 blocks, like, a lot of people aren't talking about her defense. She's tied for 4th in the Big Ten in both steals and blocks. So I guess we need to also start that all defensive team conversation, but you can't deny that performance and what she's been doing the course of the season.
And you do that, and you're also 4th in the nation in scoring. You understand why people are talking about her in that way. I don't want to shortchange Lauren Betts at all. I mean, as you said, she's been a fabulous player. Now, she's a little banged up, which I know is a concern here for UCLA going forward. But give us a sense of kind of where things are with Betts. She was held in check a little bit in that game. Obviously, Watkins and Betts aren't going head-to-head per se, but still held in check in that one. Like, what needs to change for her here going forward?
Yeah, again, credit to USC for figuring out what they wanted to do. I thought it was a team effort when it came to their end. Like, the post held it down, but it was truly the guards who were the difference maker. They were flying in, cutting off angles. Every single time she wanted to turn and shoot and finish over her left shoulder, right shoulder, they were right there making things disruptive. So I thought it was just a great job moving forward, and something they would have to clean up moving forward as well. Like, USC doubled her. They went away from it. She started to get going. So you see what doubling her does, and like what we've seen from many teams trying to game plan from her. But to make that in-game adjustment, to run it back and have everyone help out as a team effort, I thought that was why she was neutralized inside. But overall, Lauren Betts is the best big in the country, one of the best players in this country. She has been able to been an offensive and defensive nightmare down the stretch for many teams, and no one has been able to figure it out with her size, her hands, her skills, her hips, the way she uses her footwork to finish. Everyone, has to have her circled on their radar because of how dominant she is. And I don't think this game defines her. I think she looks at film and runs it back. And I think March 1st is going to be really interesting.
I agree with you there. And then, of course, there's the possibility of them playing for the Big Ten tournament championship as well. And you've got to think Lauren Betts certainly has that March 1st game circled on her mental schedule as she moves forward. UCLA was still the number 1 overall seed in the selection committee rankings that were released over the weekend. USC was a 2 seed. They were the 5th overall, so the highest of the 2 seeds. You had Ohio State in that top 16 as well. What was your reaction to where the Big Ten ended up?
Yeah, exactly how I have it in my bracket prediction. I wasn't shocked that UCLA didn't move from that number one overall seed. Like, obviously, that one game didn't define them. Their full body of work still speaks for itself. It's so strong with 9 quad one wins. They have 7 of top 25 wins also, and a 23-game win streak before dropping their first game. And I'm also not surprised with USC as a 2 seed. Like, just a dominant statement win coming over to beat UCLA. The Trojans still have Texas, Notre Dame, and South Carolina ahead of them. South Carolina and Texas has the most quad one wins, so that was understandable, but they still have a fighting chance to get into that one line. But overall, I thought, the committee placing the Big Ten exactly where they needed to be. Ohio State, they still have some work to get done, considering what they've been in close games, and in that final frame, they haven't been able to, really show their dominance down the stretch, and it's something they need to clean up moving forward. But when you look at the Big Ten across the board, it's so deep, it's so dangerous. There's no days off, truly, but I wasn't shocked with any of the seeding. It was pretty as expected in the top 16 reveal.
You talk about the depth of the Big Ten. I want to leave you with this. Just give us a sense right now, how many Big Ten teams in your bracket as of now, Autumn?
As of right now, I have 13 teams. Washington, I just snuck them right back in. Last foreign team for me. They recently took USC to the wire. It took a comeback win for USC to even get that one. The committee looks at that, like how competitive you are in these matchups. And they've been in a lot of these games, like earlier this season, they fell by LSU by 1 point. They challenged UCLA. They nearly knocked off USC by 5 points. I think they're right there. They still need that signature win. Their biggest win comes from Illinois, but if they can get it done, they have a good stretch ahead of them. Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, another shot at Oregon. It could be interesting down the stretch. And of course, the Big Ten tournament.
It's amazing to think of 13 teams in, but again, the quality of the league has been so good this year. The Nets got 12 teams in the top 40, so it all checks out. It is a really, really good conference. Autumn, I know it is a whirlwind for you as you head down the stretch here. We always appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time. Thanks.
Thank you. March is near. Here we go.
Wrapping things up on Big Ten today, we mentioned a really good schedule tonight in the Big Ten. Purdue and Michigan State is the early game. Illinois, Wisconsin tips at 8:30 Eastern on FS1, and then Minnesota and UCLA to follow. Let's focus on Purdue and Michigan State with the time that we have left. 2 of the top 3 in the conference going head-to-head. We mentioned Purdue is in the midst of its roughest stretch just over these last 2 games of the season. Michigan State gained some confidence here over the weekend. I think it's a fascinating game, Mike. What stands out to you?
Well, the thing that stands out is even Matt Painter in the pregame interview on Saturday talked about how they don't have great rim protection. And that's something that if Michigan State wants to win this game, I think they need to exploit that. And that starts with attacking the rim. It obviously includes the big guys, guys like Jackson Kohler, who did such a nice job down in Illinois. But it starts with attacking the rim, and that begins with Jaden Akins in the starting lineup, having an attacking mentality, having ferocity when he goes to the rim. It includes Jace Richardson, but I don't worry as much about ferocity with him. I think he's going to attack if he gets the opportunity. But Jaden is such an important player. When he goes to the rim, when he goes to the lane with confidence, I think it changes who Michigan State is as a team. We saw that as well on Saturday night at Illinois. He made some huge plays in the midway point of the second half when that game was in the balance that kept Michigan State competitive, and eventually they were allowed to move forward with that by forcing and taking advantage of Illinois' offensive struggles down the stretch.
I agree 100%, Mike. This is one of those games where you're Jaden Akins. You have lived your whole life wanting to be a Spartan. You got to have one of those at-home senior night, big-time games in a big-time atmosphere to really solidify your career. But I'm also giving you Trey Holloman. Trey Holloman was big-time in that second half at Illinois. When Trey Holloman is aggressive, when he's getting downhill, when he's playing with confidence, it changes the lineup because now you have Jaden Akins on one side, you have Trey Holloman on the other side, and they're causing havoc for your defense. And I hear Coach Painter when he talks about rim protection. No Zach Edey, but that should be no problem because rim protection starts with your guards. And Purdue has said all season, we have the best backcourt in the conference. Well, you have to be the best backcourt on both ends of the floor. You have to guard your yard. Rim protection starts with the guards on the perimeter. If the guards are getting whipped off the bounce like they were against Wisconsin, John Tonje, Max Klesmit, Michigan State is going to live in the lane, and Trey Kaufman-Renn may pick up a couple fouls. So perimeter defense, transition defense, and defensive rebound will be huge for Purdue going on the road because you cannot allow Michigan State to just whip you off the bounce and get into that lane and cause havoc.
Michigan State, single-digit fast break points 3 of the last 5 games, so some teams have done a good job slowing them down. We saw Indiana zone them up.
They better
Great
not zone.
success.
I'm going to throw up. They better not zone. I will throw up all over this tape. Coach Painter, you better not zone. We do not play zone at Purdue.
Fortunately, I'm not in tonight, so if you throw up on the table, it's someone else's problem. See you next time.